I failed more times than I can remember. Every failure hurt, until one day I realized they were trying to teach me something. That lesson changed my life forever. People often ask me what my greatest teacher was. Was it my school? Was it my parents? Was it a wise old man I met one day? I always give the same answer. My greatest teacher was failure. Most people look surprised. Some even smile. They think I am joking. But I am not. Failure followed me for many years. At first, I hated it. Later, I feared it. And finally, I learned to thank it. This is the story of how failure slowly became the best teacher I ever had. When I was 10 years old, I loved drawing. Every afternoon after school, I sat by my bedroom window with a pencil and a notebook. I drew trees. I drew houses. I drew birds flying across the sky. I wasn't very good, but I didn't care. Drawing made me happy. One day, our teacher announced an art competition. The winner's picture will be displayed in the school hallway, she said. I felt excited. For the next week, I worked harder than I ever had before. I erased lines again and again. I added tiny details. I stayed up late one evening because I wanted everything to be perfect. When I finished, I smiled. It wasn't the best drawing in the world, but it was the best drawing I had ever made. I carried it to school carefully, afraid the paper might bend. A few days later, the winners were announced. I stood with my classmates, listening carefully. Third place, second place, first place. None of them were me. For a moment, I thought maybe the teacher had forgotten my name. But she hadn't. The competition was over. My picture wasn't chosen. I looked at the winning drawings. They were beautiful, much better than mine. I quietly folded my paper and placed it inside my school bag. That afternoon, I walked home more slowly than usual. When I reached my house, my mother opened the door. How did it go? I forced a smile. I didn't win. She nodded gently. I see. I waited for her to tell me not to be sad. Instead, she asked, Did you enjoy drawing it? I looked at her. Yes. Then no one can take that away from you. At 10 years old, I didn't understand what she meant. All I could think about was losing. The next year, I didn't enter the competition. I told myself I wasn't interested. The truth was different. I was afraid. It was easier not to try than to fail again. Without realizing it, I had learned my first dangerous lesson. If you never try, you never lose. But you never grow either. As I grew older, I became careful. Very careful. I only did things I knew I could do well. If something looked difficult, I avoided it. If success wasn't almost certain, I quietly walked away. From the outside, I looked confident. Inside, I was protecting myself from another failure. I thought I was being smart. I didn't realize fear was making my world smaller. When I entered high school, our English teacher announced a speech contest. Students from every class could join. The winner would represent the school at a city competition. My classmates became excited. You should join. One friend looked at me. Ethan, your English is pretty good, I laughed nervously. No, it's not. It is. You read well. You pronounce words clearly. I shook my head. I don't think so. The truth was, I wanted to join very much. But another voice inside me whispered, What if you fail? That voice sounded familiar. It had been with me since the art competition years before. It had grown louder every year. For several days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I imagined standing on the stage. I imagined forgetting my words. I imagined everyone laughing. The pictures inside my mind felt so real that I decided not to. Join, problem solved. At least, that was what I told myself. But something strange happened. When the contest day arrived, I sat in the audience watching my classmates speak. Some were excellent. Some made mistakes. One student forgot half of his speech. Everyone waited patiently. While he smiled nervously and continued, nobody laughed. Nobody pointed. Nobody called him a failure. As I watched him leave the stage, the audience applauded, not because he was perfect, because he dared to finish. On the way home, one thought stayed with me. The people on stage were afraid. Two, the difference was they stepped onto the stage anyway. I had lost before the competition even began. Not because I wasn't good enough, because fear had already decided for me. Years passed. I graduated from high school and entered university. I promised myself that this time I would become braver. Life smiled quietly, as if it already knew something, didn't, because university was about to teach me a lesson that no classroom ever could, and that lesson would begin with one of the biggest failures of my life. University felt like a new beginning. The campus was full of energy. Students hurried from one class to another. Some already had clear dreams. Others were still searching. I was somewhere in the middle. I wanted to do well. I wanted to become someone my family could be proud of. More than anything, I wanted to prove something to myself. I wanted to believe that I was capable. During my second semester, our professor gave us an important assignment. We had to create a project that solved a real problem in our community. It would take 2 months. At the end, every group would present their work to the whole class. The best project would receive a special award. This time, I made a decision. I won't run away. When my classmates formed groups, I joined 3 other students. Daniel was one of them. He smiled when he saw me. "We'll make a good team," I smiled back. "I hope so." For the first few weeks, everything went well. We shared ideas. We worked late in the library. We laughed over cups of coffee. For the first time, I felt like I truly belonged to a team. As the deadline came closer, problems began to appear. One teammate became very busy with family matters. Another caught the flu and missed several meetings. Without planning to, Daniel and I started doing most of the work. Some nights, we stayed on campus until the library closed. I was tired, but I kept telling myself, if I work hard enough, everything will be fine. Deep inside, I believed hard work could protect me from failure. I would soon learn that life doesn't always work. That way presentation day finally arrived. Students, dressed neatly. The classroom was full. Our professor smiled. "Good luck, everyone." One by one, each group presented. Some projects were creative, some were simple. Then it was our turn. Walked to the front of the room with my teammates. My heart was beating fast. I took a deep breath. Daniel began speaking. Everything was going smoothly. Then, it was my turn. I clicked the remote. Nothing happened. I clicked. Again. The screen stayed frozen. Someone tried to help. Still nothing. The computer had stopped working. For a few seconds, the room became completely silent. Felt every eye looking at me. The silence seemed louder than any sound. My mind went completely blank. I knew the presentation. I had practiced many times, but without the slides, I suddenly couldn't remember where to begin. Words disappeared. My hands became cold. I'm sorry. That was all I could say. Daniel stepped forward. He spoke calmly. "We'll continue without the slides." He smiled at me. "It's okay," but I wasn't okay. The rest of the presentation felt like a dream. I spoke. I answered questions. I smiled when people looked at me, but inside, I believed everything had fallen apart. When the presentations ended, our professor thanked everyone. A week later, the results were announced. Our project did not win. In fact, it received one of the lowest scores in the class. I stared at the paper for a long time. I felt embarrassed. I felt disappointed. Most of all, I felt that I had failed my teammates. That evening, I sat alone on a bench outside the library. The campus was quiet. Students walked past, talking about their weekend plans. I barely noticed them. One thought kept repeating inside my head. "You failed." After a while, someone sat beside me. It was Daniel. He handed me a bottle of water. "You've been here a long time." I nodded. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I ruined the presentation." Daniel looked surprised. "You didn't ruin it." I froze. "Yes." I forgot what to say. Yes. We lost because of me. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, Ethan, do you really believe one moment defines 2 months of hard work? I didn't answer. Because part of me did believe that. Daniel looked toward the trees. When I was in high school, he said, I wanted to be on the basketball team. You play basketball? He laughed. Not anymore. I tried out 3 years in a row. What happened? I failed every time. I looked at him. You? He nodded. I wasn't good enough. So you gave up? No. I became the team manager. I smiled. The manager? Yes. I couldn't play, but I could still help. What happened after that? I learned from the coach every single day. He smiled. The funny thing is, a few years later I became a better player than I had ever imagined. What changed? I stopped asking, why did I fail? I started asking, what is failure trying to teach me? His question stayed with me. What is failure trying to teach me? Not, why me? Not, why am I unlucky? But, what can I learn? It sounded simple. Yet I had never asked that question before. Every failure in my life had become a wall. Maybe it could become a door instead. The next morning, I visited our professor during office hours. I expected criticism. Instead, she smiled warmly. Come in, Ethan. I wanted to apologize. What for? The presentation. She folded her hands. Tell me. What do you think went wrong? I explained everything. The computer, my panic, my silence. She listened carefully. When I finished, she nodded. Those things happened. Then she surprised me. But that's not the biggest lesson. It isn't, she smiled. The biggest lesson is that you depended on your slides more than your understanding. I thought about her words. She was right. I had memorized the order of the presentation. I hadn't truly learned how to explain it. Naturally. The failure wasn't just bad luck. It had revealed a weakness I didn't know I had. Before I left, my professor said something I will never forget. Ethan, yes? The purpose of education isn't to avoid mistakes. It's to become wiser because of them. I thanked her and walked outside. The afternoon sun was shining. Everything looked the same. But inside me, something had begun to change. For the first time, I wasn't trying to erase a failure from my life. I was trying to understand it. Over the following weeks, I made a new habit. Whenever something went wrong, I wrote it in a small notebook. At the top of each page, I wrote one simple question. What did this teach me? If I missed a deadline, I wrote what I could do differently. If I misunderstood an assignment, I wrote how to prepare better. If I felt nervous speaking English, I practiced one more conversation instead of blaming myself solely. My notebook filled with lessons. Something unexpected happened. The more failures I wrote down, the less afraid of them I became. They no longer looked like enemies. They looked like teachers. I didn't know it yet, but life was about to give me an even greater test. A failure that could not be solved with better preparation or harder work. And that lesson would change not only the way I learned, but the way I lived. The next semester began quietly. I still carried my small notebook everywhere. Whenever something went wrong, I opened it. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? I asked, what can this teach me? At first it felt strange, but slowly it became a habit. And little by little, I noticed something. I was no longer afraid of making small mistakes. I simply learned from them and kept moving. One afternoon, our professor announced a new opportunity. A local company was looking for student interns. Only 3 students would be chosen. Many people in my class became excited. This could help us find a job after graduation. You should apply. Daniel looked at me. You'd be great. I smiled. I don't know. You won't know unless you try. Those words reminded me of something. For years, I had been saying no to myself before life had the chance to answer. This time I didn't want to do that. That evening, I filled out the application. I checked it 3 times before pressing the button. When I clicked submit, I smiled. No matter what happened, at least I had tried. 2 weeks later, the results arrived. I opened the email with shaking hands. I read it once. Then I read it again. My name wasn't there. I wasn't one of the 3 students. For a few seconds, the old feeling returned. The heavy feeling. The familiar voice whispered, "You failed again." I closed my laptop, I took a deep breath, then I reached into my backpack. I opened my notebook. On a new page, I wrote failure number 18, then I wrote the question, what did this teach me? I smiled a little. The answer didn't come immediately, but I knew it would. The next day, I saw one of the students who had been accepted. His name was Alex. I congratulated him. "That's amazing." He smiled. "Thank you." Then he surprised me. "No, I almost didn't apply." "Really?" He nodded. "I thought I wasn't good enough." I laughed softly. So did I. We both smiled. For a moment, I realized something. Everyone carries invisible fears. The people who seem confident are often afraid too. The difference is not that they have no fear. The difference is that they move forward anyway. A few days later, I received another email. It was from the company. My heart started beating faster. I opened it carefully. The message said, "Although you were not selected for the internship, we were impressed by your attitude during the interview. We would like to offer you feedback if you are interested." I stared at the screen. Feedback? No one had ever offered me that before. Part of me wanted to ignore the email. Another part remembered my notebook. I replied, "Yes, I would be grateful." The meeting lasted only 20 minutes. The manager smiled kindly. "Ethan, you did many things well." I relaxed a little, then he continued. "But there is one thing holding you back." "What is it?" "You answer questions correctly, but you answer them too carefully." I looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You spend so much time trying not to make a mistake that people cannot see your real personality." His words surprised me. He continued, "We weren't looking for the perfect student. We were looking for someone who could learn." I thanked him before leaving. As I walked home, I kept thinking about that sentence. We were looking for someone who could learn, not someone who never failed. Someone willing to keep growing. That evening, I visited the library again. The older librarian was still working there. He smiled when he saw me. "Ethan, it's good to see you." "It's good to see you too." We talked for a while. Then I told him about the internship. "I didn't get it." He nodded calmly. "And what did you learn?" I smiled. "You always ask that," he laughed, "because the answer is always more important than the failure." I told him about the manager's advice. He listened carefully. Then he said, "When a tree grows, it doesn't apologize for taking up space." I looked at him. You don't have to hide your ideas just because you're afraid of making mistakes. That sentence stayed with me. For years, I had spoken softly, shared less, stayed in the background, not because I had nothing to say, because I was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Slowly, I began changing again. During class discussions, I raised my hand more often. Sometimes my answers were right, sometimes they weren't. When I made a mistake, I smiled instead of feeling ashamed. I noticed something surprising. My classmates didn't think less of me. Sometimes they even thanked me. One student said, "I was wondering the same thing." Another laughed. "I'm glad you asked first." I realized that my mistakes were helping. Other people learned too. Failure wasn't only teaching me, it was connecting me with others. One Saturday morning, Daniel invited me to join him on a hike. The path led through a quiet forest. Birds sang above us. The air smelled fresh after the rain. We walked for almost an hour before reaching a hill. From the top, we could see the whole valley. It was beautiful. Daniel sat on a large rock. "So," he asked, "do you still hate failure?" I smiled. "I don't think so." "What changed?" I looked at the view. I used to think failure was the end of the story. And now? Now I think it's the place where the real story begins. Daniel smiled. I like that. So do I. As we started walking back down the hill, I remembered the little boy who had lost the art competition. I remembered the teenager who was too afraid to enter the English speech contest. Remembered the university student who froze during the presentation. For years, I thought those moments proved I wasn't good enough. Now I see them differently. Each failure had quietly given me something: patience, humility, courage, wisdom. Without those painful moments, I might never have grown into the person I was becoming. Still, there was one lesson left, the hardest lesson of all. It wasn't about school, it wasn't about work, it was about learning to forgive myself. And that lesson would change my heart more than any success ever could. The final year of university arrived more quickly than I expected. The campus that once felt so large now felt familiar. The classrooms, the library, the quiet path through the trees. Every place held a memory. Some memories made me smile. Others reminded me of the person I used to be. The boy who believed failure was something to hide. The young man who thought one mistake could decide his future. Looked back with kindness because I knew he had been doing his best. One afternoon, our professor made an announcement. The graduation ceremony will include a student speech. The faculty would like one volunteer. The room became silent. No one raised a hand. I looked down at my notebook, the same notebook that had traveled with me through so many difficult days. I slowly opened it. The first page read, "What did this teach me?" I smiled. Then, before fear could stop me, I raised my hand. I'll do it. The words surprised even me. Several classmates turned and smiled. Daniel gave me a quiet thumbs up. For the first time in my life, I had chosen courage before comfort. During the following weeks, I prepared carefully, but this time, something was different. I practiced without trying to sound perfect. I allowed myself to pause. I allowed myself to make small mistakes. If I forgot a sentence, I simply began again. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" I asked, "What if someone needs to hear this?" That one question changed everything. My speech was no longer about proving myself. It was about encouraging others. Graduation day arrived. Families filled the hall. Parents smiled proudly. Friends took pictures together. I stood behind the stage, taking a slow, deep breath. My hands were shaking. Then I laughed quietly. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled me. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage. The lights were bright. Hundreds of faces looked toward me. Years earlier, I would have frozen. This time I smiled. "Good afternoon, everyone." My voice was calm, not because I wasn't nervous, because I had learned that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to move forward, while fear walks beside you. I told the audience about my first art competition. I told them about the speech contest I never entered. I shared the story of the broken presentations. Some people laughed, some nodded, many listened. Quietly, then I said, "For many years, I thought success would teach me everything. I was wrong. My greatest lessons came from the days I wanted to forget." The room became very still. I continued. Every failure asked me one simple question: will you stop here, or will you keep growing? And every time I chose to keep growing, failure became my teacher instead of my enemy. When I finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then the audience began to clap. The applause was warm, but what stayed with me wasn't the sound. It was the peace inside my heart. After the ceremony, many people came to talk to me. One student said, "I thought I was the only one who was afraid." Another smiled and said, "Your story reminded me not to give up." An older professor shook my hand. "Thank you for being honest." As I listened, I realized something beautiful. The moments I had once hidden with shame had become the moments that helped other people. My failures had found a purpose. A few weeks later, I packed my things and left the university. Before going home, I walked to the library one last time. The older librarian was arranging books. Just as he always had, he smiled when he saw me. "So, you graduated." I did. "And how is your greatest teacher?" I laughed. "Still teaching me," he smiled. "I hope it always will." "So do I." Before I left, I thanked him. "For what?" "For asking me the right question." He nodded. "Remember, life will continue giving you lessons. Some will come wrapped in success. Many will come wrapped in failure. Open both." Never forgot those words. Years have passed since then. Life has brought me new opportunities. It has also brought new disappointments. I have made mistakes at work. I have said the wrong words. I have missed good chances, have failed more times than I can count, but something has changed. Now, when failure knocks on my door, I no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, I make a cup of tea. I sit quietly and I ask, "What are you here to teach me today?" Sometimes the answer comes quickly. Sometimes it takes weeks. Sometimes it takes years. But eventually, every failure leaves behind a lesson, and every lesson makes me a little wiser. If you are listening to this story today, perhaps you are carrying your own failure. Maybe you failed an exam. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe someone rejected you. Maybe you made a mistake that you cannot stop thinking about. If that is true, I hope you remember this. Failure is painful. There is no need to pretend otherwise. It can make you cry. It can make you doubt yourself. It can make you want to quit. But failure is not the opposite of success. Very often, it is the road that leads to it. Every person you admire has failed. Many of them have failed more times than they have succeeded. The difference is not that they never fell. The difference is that they kept standing up again and again and again. When I think about the little boy holding his drawing all those years ago, I no longer feel sadness. I smile, because I know something he didn't know then. Winning the competition would have made him happy for one day. Losing it helped shape the person he would become for a lifetime. Sometimes the greatest gifts do not arrive dressed as victories. Sometimes they arrive quietly, wearing the clothes of disappointment. Only later do we realize they were gifts all along. Today, I still keep that small notebook. Its pages are old now. Some corners are bent. The cover has faded, but whenever life becomes difficult, I open it. On the very first page, I still read the same question that changed my life. What did this teach me? It is such a simple question, yet it has guided me through fear, through disappointment, through failure, and back toward hope. Because success may celebrate who you are today, but failure, when you are willing to learn from it, has the quiet power to help you become the person you were always meant to be. Before you leave, I want you to remember one thing. If you are failing today, it does not mean your story is over. It may simply mean your greatest teacher has just arrived. Every mistake can teach you. Every setback can make you stronger. Every failure can become the beginning of a better version of yourself, if you choose to learn instead of giving up. So the next time life doesn't go your way, don't ask, "Why did I fail?" Ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" If this story encouraged you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Keep learning English. Keep believing in yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.